between the initial boom, history repeats itself, and we'll just go real quickly at this, how we got there. In the 1980s, there was a real estate boom at that particular time. Commercial real estate were granting loans, commercial loans had an increase of 7% to 12% of banks' total asset, commercial loans. Total assets, 12% of their total assets on the books were commercial real estate loans. The market went up, but then again it came down. And the government had to bail things out. They had to spend over $157 billion to protect borrowers and depositors' assets at that time in these banks and loans. Over 2,400 banks and savings and loans just disappeared and went out of business at that time. Between 86 and 94, as I mentioned, there was 1,043 S&Ls or thrifts that failed and 1,248 banks that failed, with assets of $726 billion, which equates to $1.19 trillion in today's dollars. And that was between 86 and 84. At that particular time, Congress came up with an idea: we're going to create the Resolution Trust Corporation, RTC. And I'm sure most of you in this room remember that back in the 80s. I remember and of course they did that to obviously dispose of properties. I remember a property very, very clearly. It was a, I think about a 200,000 square foot regional mall that was built, and this is 1987, in Hudson, 2 miles north of US 19 in Hudson. I'm sure a lot of you probably remember that property. It now houses a super Walmart. RTC disposed of the property, 200,000 square feet on 30 acres of commercial property. It sold to GE Capital Corporation for $650,000. And there was a gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name, from St. Petersburg that wanted to buy that. And he was pretty upset about it. He was going to sue the RTC, which was useless. But there was an article in St. Pete Times about he offered $2.6 million for the property. Remember that? Sold for $650,000. Walked away with $2 million. I just can't imagine who would build a 200,000 square foot mall, which incidentally was never occupied. I remember walking through it and said, "This is phenomenal. Where's everybody? There's nobody here." There was never a tenant in it. And it was built in Hudson in 1987, 23 years ago. I don't understand why someone built a regional mall in Hudson in 1987. But anyways, that's what happened to that.
Because they had the financing.
I'm sorry?
Because they had the financing.
Financing, that's exactly right. That's right. Exactly right, 100%. From 1990 onward, commercial real estate began to be a popular investment again for 4 reasons. Basic factors were there. The economy was growing, an upswing. Demand for office and retail space was growing, and regulatory problems of the government were resolved. The debt was the restructuring of investments into our real estate investment trusts, REITs, increased from $10 billion to $175 billion. Wall Street banks found it easy to get into these investments with low capital entry. Things were going good at that time. Reason number 3, the Tax Reform Act of 1986. Let's hear it for Ronald Reagan. Let's clone him, bring him back. Drop the tax rate from 50% to 28%. Brought in low-income tax credits. Allowed tax deductions for rental properties. When you sink money into business and you build and you hire people, what does that do? That creates more tax dollars into the government. It's hard to understand why that can't be. People can understand. The government can't understand that. If you invest, you're going to create tax dollars, and everything's going to have jobs. The government's going to have more income. Everything's going to be great. And of course, the 4th reason, the bursting of the technology bubble in 2001. All of a sudden, that just popped, and people said, "We'll put our money back in commercial real estate." So during the real estate boom in the mid-2000s, we're seeing the same things again that happened in the 1980s. Interest-only loans, very, very lax underwriting standards, banks being caught up in the dream, prices never ending, going up, things are going great. We're doing great, expanding, wonderful. In late let me relate another story. This is really funny. Curious. I was I was with a friend and a client in 2006, and we had just finished viewing some waterfront property. I took a helicopter trip of preview of some property in Venice. So we were driving back from Venice, and he had a cell phone on speaker, and it rang. And this gentleman and his partner had just finished constructing a 230-unit apartment complex. Now, it wasn't quite done, it was almost done. It was for rental, but they built it to condo standards, they upgraded it, thinking that perhaps maybe at some point they'll sell the condos. The phone rings, and I'm listening, I would not believe it if I hadn't heard it myself. It's a broker on the phone, broker number one, called. Say, listen, I'm not gonna say his name, but listen, we want that apartment complex. We'll have a group that's prepared to offer you $17 million for it. And he looks at me, hangs up the phone, and he tells the broker, I gotta call my partner. So what you do, he calls the partner says, tell him to put $500,000 hard, and we'll think about it. Hung up the phone. Before he had a chance to call broker number one back, broker number two called and said, look, we know what's happening. We want that apartment complex. We'll pay $18 million. Now this is in the space of 4 minutes. 4 minutes. $18 million. He says, okay, call my partner. I swear, I'm telling you, it's exactly how it happened. Hung up the phone, broker number one called back and said, we don't want this other group involved. We know what they're doing. We'll give you $20 million for that apartment complex. $20 million, cash, no financing. He's like looking at me, I'm looking at him, I said, I can't, he almost ran off the road. And before a chance to call his partner, broker number two called back and said, we want to put an end to this right now. We'll give you $23 million cash for it. We'll close, we'll have a 60-day due diligence, 30-day close. Now the sale closed. The sale closed. Before they closed, during the 60-day due diligence period and the escrow, they had 50% of those units resold. And they purchased them for $100,000 a door, $23 million, 230 units. They had them resold, 50% of them before they closed, at $150,000 a door. And shortly after closing, within less, because I kept track of the next 4, 5, 6 months, they sold 100%, $150,000 a door. Now the last thing I heard of that apartment complex, I was doing a data search end of last year or so, and there were a package of condos for sale in that complex. The asking price was $60,000 each, 1,000 square feet. So they paid $150,000. They're asking $60,000 now per door. Just a glaring example. I thought it was kind of funny. Again, I would never have believed it unless I heard every single word of the conversation. Within 20 minutes, it went price went from 17 million to 23 million. After that happened, hung up with the one who looked at me and says, you know, we'd have taken 16 and a half for it. Laughing about it. It was funny. It was a riot. Anyways, that's what's happened on it. 2003, large banks had commercial real estate portfolios equal to 156% of their risk-based capital. By 2006, that figure was 318%, more than double in 3 years of their risk-based capital in commercial real estate at that particular time. Subprime residential mortgages, 2007, having a problem. The bubble's beginning to burst. FDIC identified commercial real estate as a problem, but most of the interest was placed in residential real estate. Congress created the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act and the Troubled Assets Relief Program, better known as TARP.